or looking in order to achieve meaningful solution to problems that and I are large to them. I'll just talk to you a little bit about my feelings on society and for. There's no that can alleviate harm. About it, that's the job of a society. You've got people that center the life. You're going to have lions and bears, sickness, war with groups of human beings, etc. And they first so that they can do much more than they could individually. Their environment more improve in their I see that as an ideal that has interrupted somewhat, or perhaps a better word for it would be distracted from. There's so much going on in our nation, so many people, so many problems, and so many great things that to be distracted from something as mundane sounding as harm might be easy. I would suggest that it's also the most important thing to do, because when you, as a society, forget to regularly look out on the horizon for the new harms that are building in your society, those are the societies that tend to break apart. Especially when the harm creeps up and affects more and more people without your knowledge, or with an indifference to its buildup. And that's the case, I think, with what I think is the greatest harm of our generation, my generation. I'm 41 years old. And that is financial savagery. And I say savagery not because it's violent necessarily, but because I know in my life, in the life of many people that I know, my path to a goal has consistently, over the last 20 years working in this country in computer-related fields, my path to my long-term goals has been washed out halfway there, or a third of the way there. The last time it happened 2 years ago, I was the closest I've ever been to that perfect credit, no debt, everything's improving situation. And then gone again. And I think it's not a laughing matter for a lot of people. I'm lucky enough that I have been able to get jobs that were high paying, even though I had to endure a lot of unemployment. So that people don't have that kind of opportunity. So I comment upon this nation to pay attention to the lack of money when it's needed is one of the biggest harms, and growing, um, to our nation and our longevity as an ongoing concern of the nation. Um, and it it does a lot of good for politicians, especially people in our government, to pay attention to this, because I think it's number one cause of losing faith in elections too. It's that cyclicality of indifference, and in the case of money, it's unavailability at certain times in your life due to unforeseen sickness, unemployment, um, and just long-term struggles of every kind. Um, the the problem has only been getting worse and worse, and really threatens to assist in the complete indifference of a society that will no longer have an idea of what the American dream means. And fortunately, with all this somber stuff, we got to get through to people a little bit, just to make a case for why the solutions are any good. So I don't like talking about the bad stuff, so let's not do that. um, the harm that I see, how do you fix it? I think there's and it um, in general, and in doing so, not only do you solve the problem of growing indifference through having your long-term goals worked out as your perspectives shrink, but you solve just about every other major social problem at once, at the same time. And it's based on this notion. Money is infinite, and it has to be. You can't think of money any other way but infinite. Um, in practical terms, in very practical, honest terms, it's infinite already. But because we challenge each other for it, we struggle for it, the people getting it, looking for it, we feel threatened by that. We base our relationships and our friendships many times on people who are at or above our own earning potential. And many other negative aspects of interpersonal behavior that come from this type of system are just completely avoidable. And fortunately, two of those things, I think, are number one and number two on the list of avoidable, and that's poverty and war. And here's the thing: if you're not with the fact that money is infinite already, $1 billion, something like that. But actually, not dollars. It's 16 billion euros. Now, they didn't just run out and mine that. In fact, having a currency backed by anything faith and credit is really a wrong-headed thing to do. They just printed it. And more to the point, they didn't print it. They created it on a computer in a bank. They moved it from one interest to another, or they just simply created it. And that's okay. That's how it should be. Now, created for that reason, I think is debatable. Just to hand out to people to help. um, without really helping. That's no good. But the fact that something that is purely created of our interests together as citizens of our societies. I mean, money is a pure abstract notion. We decide what money is, how it values itself. We decide on every aspect of money. That's it within our control. So we should be able to create it whenever we want. But consider that when we do, that's what we're doing. And just be honest. Um, because when you're honest about it, you can do things and be expected to do things with it that are better than we do with it now. And by that I mean make it available when it's needed. You know, getting back to what societies are here for in the first place, it's to alleviate harm. And in the United States, we've got that, but for other countries as well. Although we do it in kind of a double negative, or two negatives equals a positive. You know, and friends, we often do that by applying complementary measures of pain to whatever's paining them, and we achieve a balance that way. But I would suggest to you that as places around the world no longer need war, the ones that are typically known as warrior nations or warlike nations, I think are starting to really get tired of it. As we turn our gaze inward domestically, that doesn't fly, because the notion of putting pain anywhere to alleviate pain or harm in a society, because the leadership are elected to be of a certain caliber that considers the entire people when they come up with solutions. And if you leave anybody out consistently, then more and more you're just not capable as a leader or part of a government that has to do with keeping people alive and happy. So that won't fly. Plus, you know, everybody knows somebody else will get hurt in something like that. And when we talk about militarization of police or things like that, it's kind of spooky, because that's not just an event, that's a turning point, and you just don't want to get to those. So let's think about what we can do in money to avoid it. And I think when you come to realize that money is infinite, we don't have to struggle for it. We don't have to compete for it. We simply be responsible with it so that it gains its value in a very certain way. Then we can achieve more with it. And consider this: social problems such as poverty, such as crime. Well, maybe not even go to immigration yet, because it's a foreign policy issue too. But just domestic stuff: poverty, crime, the inability of families to afford their healthcare premiums, the cyclical loss of a stream of wealth that knocks away your path to your long-term goal, while it shrinks your perspective on life. Because when you have to think about what you're going to eat next week, then your perspective just shrank to a week. you can't think about a long-term goal anymore if you're hungry. And if that happens a lot, that you get back on track and then you get knocked off of it again. And I think it does, by the way, because there's close to 45 million people on food stamps right now. And that's with 5% unemployment. I think it does happen a lot. You tend to lose sight of what you can do. And when your back's against the wall, you're thinking in terms of a week at a time or something. You tend to do things that are against the boundaries of our society. And that's no good. So if we can consider for a second that all social problems are really psychological problems because they have to do with people, then let's consider a psychological model that everyone is familiar with, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And even if you don't know that name, Maslow's hierarchy is something you would probably recognize, or at least recognize the shape of. It's a pyramid, and it starts out with the things that you need, and it goes up to the entirety of what Maslow thought everyone needs at different points in their life as they improve. And at the base of that is physiological and safety concerns. So that's where you've got your basic alleviation of harm, that's food, clothing, shelter, everything you need to avoid struggle. And by struggle, what I mean is this: struggle are the unforeseen circumstances you have to overcome so that you can continue along your path of challenging circumstances that you've laid out for yourself towards your goals. And if you hit struggle too much, you always stay below that 0 point. That's where struggle is. It's below the ordinary. It keeps you down below. And you want to get back on the road so you can hit the pavement faster and faster. That's the bottom line. So, my idea is pay everybody. Have plenty of money. We already value people with a dollar amount, and that dollar amount right now is roughly $56,600 per person in the negative. That's what the American government has spent on our behalf, and that's our share of the national debt per person. So we're already valued at $56,600 each. So maybe we could flip that and make it positive. And I suggest something along the lines of $1,500 or something dollars a month at least. Probably closing in closer on $2,000. I don't know what that number is because I don't want to get into details like that. That's not really where I'm coming from. I'm looking at structures here. Because when you have problems of a cyclical nature, and that means problems that you feel like you're consistently solving, and yet they keep coming back every time you solve them. That means you're applying detailed changes to a structural problem. So it's a matter of geometry at that point. Fix the structure. You don't know what the problem is yet, or you'd have solved it. And for us, the problem is not enough money. And fortunately, the byproduct of this solution, pay everybody, to avoid the first two rungs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we put a little commission together, as a matter of fact, you know what we should do? The Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve was created to be a third-party integrity that kept money out of the hands of politicians so that you couldn't wage warfare between countries with or against your own population. We return the Federal Reserve to that noble idea and allow them to be in charge again. Because third-party integrity really is integrity. I mean, that's a show of integrity. Let them tell us what struggle-free is. And in doing so, you just figured out how to fund any healthcare system that you've decided to put in place for everybody. The premiums can be part of a struggle-free amount. Basically, which means car. Basic. And once again, now I notice food stamps just went up again, and I know that because I'm on them. I have this, but it's only nice because I haven't worn a suit in a while. The fact is, food stamps, they 196 a month. It's okay. If you're gluten intolerant like me, meals are a little bit more expensive than that. But it's fine. It's good. But just consider that when you don't take the time to focus on money, like most people don't, then you always run the risk of coming up short before your next pay cycle. And that's struggle. It's worry. It's uncertain. Because you don't get enough to be certain. To be certain, you have to have enough plus a little bit more. It's project management. Projected plus 10%, something like that. And in doing so, if this nation were to cut checks to every adult, whether they're unemployed, whether they've ever had a job, whether they have 2 jobs, doesn't matter. Rich, poor, same check. You would immediately have on your hands a situation like we've never had before, except in one term, in terms of war. In war, the society at its highest levels has an opportunity to speak to the individual and express concern for them by way of making sure that their environment is free from possible death or major harm. And that's war has traditionally created renewed interest in patriotism and just being part of society again. Because people stick together and they remember what they had in common with others, and they feel like their government cares because everybody's in it together. Recently, we don't have any more war to fight. And the wars on the abstract notions like poverty and drugs, they haven't worked. But when you pay somebody to have a better life, always, and that they can be certain that no matter what happens to them, they will never fall below the necessity of physiological and safety concerns, those 2 lower steps of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then you've just elevated the entire society at once. They all now have something in common, and they've all just been bribed to take their time to understand what you're doing. They can move forward intelligently and not just be drug along by everybody else who said, yeah, this time. Bring everybody back into an understanding and an inspiration that matters. So I hope you'll take the time to really take a look and have an interest in what I've written below this video. And as the need arises, I'll also place some ideas that I've got about what you can do with a utopian capitalist infinite currency situation. Um, and I hope you get a lot out of it. I hope actually that you get really excited about it, because I am. When I was growing up as a kid, I always wanted to be a politician. But a summer in Washington and some other thoughts on computer technology and things that got in my view instead took that dream away, really. When I saw some of the gridlock, and I recognized that it wasn't a place for a leader quality like me. That also gets frustrated quickly when I can't express the full leadership ability. Um, in I guess the best way to put it is until it gets cleaned up a little bit to make room for leadership again and not just management. Um, it's not for me, and I think utopian capitalism is the answer, because not only would people get as much money as they need to avoid struggle, the government does all the money you need when you need it for what you need it for on time, every time. That attracts a better class of leadership and representation to the situation, because there's a new tool in the tool chest that can make a hero out of you and give you a long-term commitment, if that's what you're interested in, politician. So, there's a lot of good in this. So check it out. If you have any questions, in the contact link, and send me an email, and I'll add it to the knowledge base so that everyone can see. And to be honest with you, I wrote some of these ideas, the fundamental ideas that form the basis of all of this, in late 2013. And since then, I haven't found a single problem with this solution. Everything fits. And everything that it achieves is something that collectively is a miracle. Individually, many miracles. I mean, just dovetailed perfect. So I really have to thank not only my love, but also my girlfriend and inspiration, Kelly. I think through art, when it's done with love, it resonates. But one thing